Our Blessed Mother appeared 18 times to Bernadette Soubirous in this village called Lourdes in France. Bernadette Soubirous was born on January 7, 1844. She was the first child of François Soubirous and Louise Soubirous. Her father was a miller who worked very hard for the family.
She's so beautiful.
Have you thought of a name yet?
Yes, what do you think of the name Bernadette?
That's such a lovely name.
Hello, Bernadette.
At the time of her birth, her family was relatively prosperous. However, due to a series of misfortunes, her family plunged into dire poverty. They were forced to live in a single room that used to be a prison cell. The cell was too small and it was considered unsanitary even for the prisoners. Despite the poverty, everyone loved one another in their family. Bernadette was the eldest of the 6 children they had. From a very young age, she suffered severe illness, leaving her weak and asthmatic. Because of this, she couldn't attend school and she could hardly read or write.
How is she, Mother?
Don't worry, dear. It's going to be all right.
Has her fever reduced?
I don't know. It's increasing by the day.
Let's pray to God. That's all what we can do now.
When she was 14, she was still studying the basic catechism with 7-year-old children. So she was intellectually ignorant of concepts of Immaculate Conception, which were soon to have a major impact on her life. On 11th February 1858, Bernadette went along with her sister and a friend to collect firewood from the nearby forest. They wandered around collecting firewood, and they reached at the foothills of the rocks of Massabielle. There was a small cave or grotto here, where the cattle often took shelter.
Here, hold this.
I found another one. Hold this, Bernadette. All right.
Hey, look over there.
Huh? What is that?
There are a lot of firewood on the other side. Come, let's go over there.
All right. First take off your shoes. I'll come with you too. Bernadette, let us cross the stream first. If it's easy, then we'll call you. All right.
Oh, the water's really cold.
Watch your step.
Bernadette, you stay there. The water is too cold. We will come back quickly.
But I want to come with you too. Can you carry me on your back? You are too heavy, sister. Wait there and we will come back soon.
Bernadette was delicate because of her asthma, and moreover, she was wearing stockings. She wanted to join her brother and sister, so she sat down to remove her stockings. While she was busy removing her stockings, the air around her started getting colder.
It's cold.
Then she heard the sound of strong wind.
Huh? Is that the sound of a storm?
She thought there was a storm coming, and she looked at the direction where the sound was coming from. But when she looked around, she found everything to be perfectly still, including the trees and plants. She turned her attention to her stockings again. After a moment, she heard the sound again. This time, she was frightened and stood up. When she looked up at the grotto, she saw that the rose bushes beneath the grotto were tossing, while all the other plants stood still. Then she saw a brilliant light emitting from the opening of the grotto. And then, to her amazement, there she saw a small figure in the opening, a lady of small stature and incomparable beauty. The figure was young and more beautiful than she had ever seen, and it was clad in white from head to toe and girded with a blue scarf. The lady then inclined her head graciously, as if inviting Bernadette to approach. Bernadette, even though she was a little frightened, didn't want to run away. She was fascinated, and she felt a mysterious attraction toward the figure. The child fell on her knees and took out her rosary. She was about to begin saying the prayers when she found she could not make the sign of the cross. Every time she attempted to draw a cross, her arms fell as if they were powerless. It was not until the radiant figure, who now held the rosary in her hands, had made the sign of the cross that the little child was able to do the same. Bernadette started reciting Ave Maria on each bead, and the apparition smiled in approval. The radiant figure disappeared after Bernadette had finished reciting the 5 decades. By now, Jean and her sister had returned.
Huh?
Come over here.
This time, Bernadette quickly removed her wooden shoes and her stockings and stepped into the water. When she walked through the water, she felt no cold and crossed the stream easily. Then she continued helping her brother and sister in collecting the firewood.
Why are you so silent today, sister? Sister?
Huh? What? You seem to be lost in thought. What is it? It's nothing. No, something is wrong. If you don't tell us now, then we will tell this to Mother. No, please don't tell them. Alright, so tell us what happened. When you went away to fetch the firewood?
Bernadette had to tell them what she had seen, on the condition that they would keep it a secret. But as soon as they reached home, they told their parents about what had happened.
You are imagining things, my dear.
My dear, you should never go back to that place again. Will you obey me?
Yes, Father.
Bernadette longed to go near Grotto of Massabielle again, but her parents forbade her. She stood at the gates and nursed her wish, praying to God. Sunday soon arrived, and the little girl's longing got more and more intense. It became so irresistible that she convinced her mother to grant her permission to go there just one more time. Her sister and Jean joined her to the grotto as well.
Hey, where are you going?
We are going to the Grotto of Massabielle.
Come with us if you want to see a miracle. I'm coming too.
Like that, many of her other friends joined as well. And by the time they reached the grotto, there were about a dozen little girls, and Bernadette was the center of all attention. One of the girls was carrying the holy water as well. They planned to throw the holy water at the apparition to see if it was really God or something evil. All of them kept watching the grotto closely, and all of a sudden, the apparition appeared before her.
There it is. What? We see nothing. She's there. No, we don't see anything.
The apparition had appeared to Bernadette alone. None of the other children could see it. The favored child was down on her knees, and with the rosary in her hands, she was looking up at the grotto which had been illuminated only for her.
It seems like only she can see the miracle. Give her the holy water. Let us test if it's God or something evil.
Bernadette was given the vial, and they asked her to do what they had planned. She obeyed, throwing a few drops of holy water into the air before her. Then she said,
Come closer if you are God.
She forgot to recite the second part, if you are devil, then go, as she saw the apparition smiling and moving toward her.
She's pleased and smiling at all of us. She's coming forward.
Seeing Bernadette's devotion, the other girls were convinced as well. They too fell on their knees and took out their rosaries. The more holy water she threw toward the grotto, the more the lady smiled. By this time, many other people arrived near the grotto. They were all wondering what was going on there.
Hey, what's going on there?
It seems that the little girl in the center is witnessing an apparition right now.
What? You must be joking.
But as they saw little Bernadette looking up at the grotto, all their irony vanished from their faces, and it was replaced by a look of wonder and respect. Bernadette had now become the talk of the town. Her mother and father were very concerned, as they thought their child was being deceived by someone.
You are not going there anymore.
You must listen to us, dear. We are worried that something bad will happen to you.
I'm sorry, Father.
Thanks, my love.
That day, Bernadette reluctantly agreed to stop going to the grotto. On the following Wednesday, she summoned up the courage to ask her mother to visit the grotto one more time.
Mother, please let me go.
How many times do I have to say no to you? You're not going anywhere near that grotto.
But Mother, please.
Go and see who is at the door.
Madam Millet.
Hello, dear.
Oh, Madam Millet, how are you?
Nothing, Louise. Meet Antoinette Perret, a member of the Congregation of the Children of Mary of Lourdes.
Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you, Louise.
Louise, we are here for your help.
Huh? How can I help you?
We know that you're not letting your daughter visit the grotto again.
That's true.
Please, Louise, can you let her come with us to the grotto? We really want to know what's going on.
No, I cannot let my daughter become the laughingstock of the town again.
Please, my friend, we want to know if she is really seeing the apparition. If it is so, then you don't realize how blessed your child really is.
I don't know. All I want is my child to be safe. Don't worry, Louise. We will take care of her.
Madame Millet finally got the permission from Bernadette's mother, and all three set out for the grotto early next morning. Madame Millet carried a blessed candle, while Antoinette carried pen and paper to record everything that might be said. As soon as they reached the grotto, Bernadette fell on her knees and took her rosary. Seeing this, the two women knelt down and began saying the rosary as well.
There she is.
Huh?
She's coming. Look.
The small body of the child was shivering with delight. When the other two looked up, following her gaze, all they could see was the wild rose bush outside the grotto. Their only glimpse of heaven was what they saw on the little girl's face. Then Antoinette approached Bernadette, handing over the pen and paper.
Ask her. Ask her if she has anything to say to us. If she says anything, then write it down.
My child, there's no need to write down what I have to say to you. Will you be so kind as to come here every day for 15 days?
Yes, of course. I will come every day.
Then Madame Millet approached her.
Bernadette, ask her if she approves us being here.
She said yes. She said you and others may come. She wishes to see a great number of people here.
And then the apparition promised to make her happy, not in this world, but in heaven. Bernadette was then taken to her parents that morning.
Louise, you are fortunate to have such a child.
Oh dear.
By now, when she heard what happened from them, her doubts were considerably lessened. She was now afraid of refusing to let her go, as the apparition had requested her to be there for the next 15 days. The next day, Bernadette's parents and aunt accompanied her to the grotto, along with some neighbors. Little Bernadette, as usual, knelt down and began praying the rosary.
Ah, look at her face. It's glowing. Is it true? My child had been saying the truth all the while?
Shortly after she began to pray the rosary, everyone noticed that her face was illuminated with a spiritual glow. On her 5th visit, the beautiful lady taught Bernadette a prayer, which she recited daily for the rest of her life. She never revealed the prayer to anyone, but she did say that she was told to always bring a blessed candle with her. Several hundreds of people had gathered around the grotto on the 6th day. Dr. Dujus, a prominent physician of Lourdes, was also present on that day. The beautiful lady told Bernadette to pray for sinners that day.
Doctor, is there anything abnormal with her?
There is nothing abnormal about her physical condition. I checked her pulse while she was in a trance, and her pulse was regular. Her respiration was easy, and nothing indicated a nervous excitement.
That day, nothing else was discussed in the town of Lourdes, other than about the incident at the grotto that morning. A meeting was called by the citizens of the town. They expressed their difference of opinion regarding the apparitions. They were concerned about the dangers that could accompany gatherings of such large crowds at the grotto. They persuaded the imperial procureur to officially forbid Bernadette from going to the grotto again. She was summoned before the imperial procureur for questioning. Jacome, the police commissioner, was questioning the little girl when Estrade, who held an official position in Lourdes, joined them.
Your stories are all lies. I know who has put you up to this.
I do not understand you, sir.
Will you promise me to never go to the grotto again?
I cannot, sir. I have promised the lady to go.
If you do not promise me at once, then I will have to put you in prison.
I am not afraid of that. I know that I have nothing to fear.
Bernadette was not afraid of any of them, so she answered them calmly and smiling. Before these people, she displayed an attitude of dignity and self-possession. We must not forget that she was just a little girl. When their attempts failed, the police chief released Bernadette to the custody of her father, with a warning to never let her go to the grotto again. But all their efforts could not stop Bernadette from going to the grotto. On the seventh day, after the conclusion of the vision that had lasted for an hour, the little girl moved on her knees toward the rosebush and kissed the ground. When they asked her what the lady had said, she replied that the lady had entrusted her with 3 secrets. The 9th apparition took place on February 25, 1858. That day, the beautiful lady asked Bernadette to drink from the fountain and to bathe in it. Bernadette was confused. There had never been a fountain at Massabielle or any kind of natural spring. Then she began to scratch the loose gravel off the ground around her. As she did so, she noticed that the ground beneath her was moist. As she kept scratching, a little pool formed with bubbles rising from it. She cupped her hands together and drank from it. Then she washed her face using the water from the pool. The next day, when the people gathered around the grotto, they were surprised to find a real stream where Bernadette had stood the previous day. During the 10th apparition, the beautiful lady told Bernadette to kiss the ground on behalf of the sinners. Bernadette immediately did so, and so did the crowd watching her. On the 11th day of the apparition, there were approximately 2,000 spectators gathered at the grotto. The lady asked Bernadette to tell the clergy to build a chapel on the site of the grotto. On the 12th day of the apparition, the lady commented that Bernadette was not using her own rosary. This was true. Bernadette was asked by Pauline Sans to use Pauline's rosary instead of her own at the grotto that day. On the 13th day of apparition, Bernadette arrived early at the grotto and prayed the rosary in front of the lady. The lady remained silent that day, except for the Glorias. On the 14th day of the apparition, the lady repeated that she wanted a chapel to be built at the place of the grotto. It was March 24th, 1858. By now, everyone in France knew that today was the last of the 15 days that the lady had requested Bernadette. 20,000 people were present at the grotto that day, including an entire military division in full dressed uniform. As Bernadette approached the grotto, a path was cleared for her by the soldiers. After the apparition was over, Bernadette told the crowd that she would continue coming to the grotto because the beautiful lady had said nothing in the form of a farewell. During the 16th apparition, which occurred on the Feast of Annunciation, the beautiful lady revealed her identity to the little girl.
I am the Immaculate Conception.
Bernadette was not sure what this name meant, as she was just a child. But the people understood, and they started flocking to Lourdes in greater numbers than ever before. Bernadette had never failed to bring a lighted candle to the grotto since the first time she had been instructed to do so by the beautiful lady. During this apparition, she unconsciously placed one of her hands over the flame of the candle. People witnessed the flame burning through her fingers. She continued to pray for at least 15 minutes while the flame burned through her hand. She emerged quietly from prayer unscathed. Then Dr. Docius took another candle and without warning touched the flame to her hand. Bernadette immediately cried out in pain. Shortly after this apparition, the prefect took matters into his own hands and ordered the grotto closed, and the rustic altar was dismantled. The 18th apparition took place on 16th July, 1858. Several months had passed after the previous apparitions, and Bernadette was relieved to see that she was becoming less of a public figure. After receiving her communion on the feast day, little Bernadette felt an irresistible urge to return to the grotto. Since the barricade was still in place, she and her aunt could not get close to the sacred spot. They knelt down in the grass, and the beautiful lady appeared to her for one last time. Bernadette joined the Order of the Sisters of Charity. Throughout her life, she remained sickly, but attended patiently to her duties. She died a holy death on April 16, 1879. She was 34 years old. Bernadette was buried on the convent grounds in Nevers, France. Her body was exhumed 30 years later on September 22, 1909, in the presence of 2 doctors, several appointed officials, and nuns from the local convent. When Bernadette's coffin was opened, there was no odor, and her body was completely untouched by the laws of nature.